I'll give the call now to Senator Roberts.
Thank you. Firstly, Mr Rogers, thank you very much and congratulations on a successful referendum. You produced an accurate result and very quickly. I might want to pass on comments from a friend of mine who's fairly fussy and interested in accuracy, and he volunteered to be one of your co-workers or workers, and he said the process of training and running the booth was first class. He had no problems, and he's a fussy bugger. We do question the format of the ballot paper, but that's history now. I wouldn't take it personally about getting some nice messages. I think after the last 3 years of the COVID response and the confusion around some of the Voice campaign, people are sick and tired of governments, so I wouldn't direct it at you. I also noticed that ticks and crosses weren't a thing. You know, Queen Bee Anne Booth had 1,281 votes, and only one of those was a cross, and there were no ticks. However, in forms completed at the booth for declaration voting, I believe the elector was required to indicate their answer with a cross.
So no cause for conspiracy theory then, but I'm
not
interjecting.
But please consider eliminating ticks and crosses from your own paperwork as a way of ensuring they are not used on polling day. So that's just a suggestion from one of the constituents. In the referendum, the Australian Electoral Commission allowed the use of AEC purple by the Yes campaign. That decision was correct in law, but let's review that for the next time. Is that possible?
Well, Senator, actually, I might just talk about the purple signs issue because it's a complex matter. So we don't own the colour purple legislatively. The AEC does not own the colour purple. I wish we did, Senator. I'd be very happy if we own purple. Indeed. And there are only limited circumstances where we can intervene with the use of the colour purple. Now, in a lot of commentary that we saw both online and in the media, there's this sort of thing about, oh my God, there's purple signs and the AEC is not doing anything about it. It's very hard when you're doing something like a short-form radio interview or a TV interview for us to say, well, let us take you through the half hour of complexity of case law and legislation about this issue and why we don't have the power to do it. People just want to know about purple signs. Before the referendum, in fact, I think before the last election, we've made clear we would prefer that campaigners and parties do not use the colour purple. But that's a legislative matter, and that would be a matter for Parliament, Senator, rather than from the AEC. But I can tell you, wherever purple signs were deployed, in those circumstances where we thought it would breach the legislation, we asked those signs to be moved, and by and large they were, and in a fairly timely manner. So we're satisfied with that. But again, I'd make a plea, please, to parties and campaigners in the future, please avoid the colour purple with white writing.
Was there a ruling regarding Josh Frydenberg's campaign using purple with Chinese people?
There was a court case, Garbutt v Liu, and it found in very limited circumstances, let me try this from memory, Senator, where the sign is indeed in purple with white writing, where that sign is placed in very close proximity to an AEC sign, almost next to it, and the third element is where it contains a message which says the right way to vote is X, it may breach the legislation. It's that specific.
It's fairly specific. Okay, thank you. Simon Frost worked for the Yes campaign in the area that created those deliberately misleading purple signs. Mr Rogers, those signs did not pass the pub test, as I think you're implying. And I also understand that Simon Frost worked for former Treasurer Josh Frydenberg's campaign. He was a senior advisor. So is there any comment there?
No, I think, as I've said, Senator, where those signs popped up, where they breached the where we thought they were at risk of breaching the legislation, we took action. But again, we don't own the colour purple and have no mandate over that.
So you'd support it if we put forward legislation on that?
Senator, whatever bill passes through Parliament as legislation, I support in any case. So
we'd certainly welcome further clarification and widening of Section 329, Senator, which I think is at the heart of your questioning.
So the ballot paper, as I said a little while ago, we disagreed on that, did not include a full reproduction of the proposed change to the Constitution as required by Section 128 of the Constitution. I understand that you don't agree it has to be presented accurately and full, and that the short description is sufficient. Is that still your position?
My position is, Senator, I think I understand the argument was put by, I think, a legal academic in South Australia. I just point out that this is absolutely a matter for the Attorney-General's Department, not the AEC, but just for the record, I also note a large number of other scholars dismissed that particular interpretation. We, just for the record, so that people understand, the form of the ballot paper followed exactly the form of the ballot paper in the legislation. The matter you're talking about is more of a constitutional issue and a legal issue, certainly to be resolved, by others, not by us.
Yeah, as I understand it, but I'm not a legal expert, the Constitution takes precedence over any legislation. Have you sought legal advice on that issue?
No, because that's not my issue, Senator. I have a number
Attorney
of other,
General.
I have a number of other issues, but I don't need that one as well. But that would be the Attorney General. So.
The Kennedy pre-poll voting centre in Cairns was located in a shop in a shopping centre. Centre management initially refused both sides permission to hand out how to vote cards and display signage, instead offering a location off their property down the street. As owners of the property, this is their prerogative, except the point of doing that was to set stalls in front of the voting centre for the bargain price of $250 a day, so they made a deal out of it. Yes took up the offer, allowing them to position copious signage and poll workers in front of the PPVC, pre-poll voting centre. No didn't have the money and weren't prevented from handing out. Is that okay? Because to have the operation of poll workers controlled by a private shopping centre management company?
Senator, it's not actually unusual for this sort of thing to occur. As I was talking before to Senator Little, we get 4 weeks' notice to find whatever venues we can, and they have to meet certain criteria as well. As you know, we have to have a number that have access for disabled Australians and a range of other requirements, security requirements. So the number of venues that we get to choose from is quite small. And occasionally it comes down to either you take that one or there'll be no polling premise in that area. Occasionally, and we've noticed before in certain large shopping centres and occasionally I think in airports when we've used those, there's no ability for political parties to hand out material. We do try and advocate on behalf of the parties. As I said at the very start in my opening statement, we think that scrutineers and campaigners play an important part in the process, but there will always be the odd event where we're unable to arrange access, where the parties are unable to gain access, I should say, to be very specific, rather than us arrange it. And that was one of those very, very unfortunate circumstances. I think of the over 7,000 polling places, that may have been only one or two that was like that.
Surely there's a benefit for the shopping centre because your voting booth becomes a draw card for them. So can there be something written into the contract?
Sadly, I know that shopping centre, in fact I think I visited that place last week, and I know Mr Pope, because we had some other issues up there as well, trying to secure polling premises was difficult.
Can you write it into the contract?
Some of them will not write that into the contract, Senator, and they say either you sign the contract that we're providing you or go somewhere else. I know that's complex, but
I think we could suggest, but...
Yeah, and we do suggest. And with that particular one, we did try and work with the centre management, is my understanding as well, and they were flat out refused. So.
Can't you write it into their legal obligations, perhaps?
They won't sign it, Senator.
Yeah. It's a free world.
Yeah.
Final comment. The AEC has been criticised for responding to a question from a voter with regard to what happens to a voter if he votes twice. And the response was accurate, that, well, you just count them. Could that have been more sensitively done in terms of, well, we have to count them, but we have precautions to make sure people don't vote twice? In hindsight, it's always easy.
Actually, I do have a view on this, Senator. I'm conscious of time, but I think I mentioned before, we were tagged, I think, 145,000 comments in social media in the middle of delivering a referendum. We're trying to serve information to the community as quickly as possible. As you've yourself said, that was highly accurate. What it was done was picked up by a few individuals and weaponised deliberately to try and denigrate Australia's electoral system. I don't understand why you'd do that. The electoral system isn't owned by the AEC. It's owned by all Australians. I was reflecting the other day, there's a section of the Act, I think it's 365, which contains a piece of information that effectively immaterial errors shouldn't vitiate an election outcome, and it was put in there by smart people that says effectively elections are complex, minor issues shouldn't actually be used in any way to denigrate election outcomes. What we've seen is that there's a few dedicated individuals online, Senator, who want to pick up the most minor of issues and create it as a huge event to try and undercut citizens' trust in electoral outcomes. So let me tell you, Senator, going back in time, we do exactly the same thing because it was an accurate answer. What I can't control is the manner in which people react. And as I read out earlier on, and I've read out 2% of some of the nutty stuff that barrels down at us, where people seize on the most minor of issues. And the whole thing we've said before about Dominion voting machines, which emerged again at this. We even had, Senator, groups of people standing outside at least one polling place in Melbourne in an organised way, handing out pens to voters who are going in to say that the AEC are going to rub your votes out. I mean, it's insane. I don't know where this comes from. I never thought I'd see this sort of thing in Australia, where these minor issues about one comment on a social media page being then used to weaponise such a ridiculous thing. So I'm sorry for a long answer, but I'm very proud of the work that our social media team did in serving up information to Australians in such a timely and informative fashion. I read out some statistics before about our overarching awareness campaign. It's the biggest campaign we ever run. I'm very proud of that, proud of the work that our individuals do. I know you know this, Senator, but our social media team, and the AEC in particular, have copped a torrent of abuse from idiots online who should know better, including threats to our staff, including death threats to our staff. It is utterly ridiculous. So I'm sorry for using that as a vehicle to point out that our staff do a great job, our social media team do a great job, and I'm extraordinarily proud of the work that they do.
Well, fortunately, the number of people that do that is very small. Sometimes they get magnified. It's just that some people latch on to what you didn't say, which was we have adequate precautions to make sure people don't vote twice. That's all I'm suggesting.
That actually was put there, Senator, but again, I'm just pointing out that these minor issues are occasionally blown out of all proportion, and I'm also just using that, and I know you won't mind because our staff are so good, again, to thank our staff that put up with some of that abuse that they get on a very regular basis.
Mr Rogers, I have... are you done,
I'm
Senator
done.
Roberts?
Thank you.
I've got a few questions.